back to another Mindful Fisherman. In this episode we are going to be looking at the various knots that I use for my fishing. I'm going to be showing some of the different knots that I use, very basic knots that I use for tying my hooks to my hook lengths. Also going to show a couple of knots that I use for tying different types of line to each other. I'm also going to show you the hair rig type knot that I use, which is just the standard knotless knot. A lot of you will already be very familiar with this. For the beginners, this will be something that you might use if you go on to do any carp fishing, but I also do use a knotless knot for some of my bream and tench fishing if I choose to hair rig some artificial or real sweet corn. Hopefully you'll get something out of this video, and we're going to start with tying a hook to a main line. For the benefit of the video, I won't be using small hooks. I will be using a large size 6/0 sea fishing hook and also brightly coloured sea fishing line. Alright, so we're going to start with one of the most basic types of knot that you will learn while you're fishing is the blood knot, or the half blood knot as it were, and the half tucked blood knot. So what we'll do is first we'll take our hook and we will insert the length of line through the back of the hook, through the rear of the eye, coming out the front like such. Then we take this back over alongside our main hook length, creating almost like a loop. So keeping a loop of line near the eye, I tend to put a finger in like this. We will then take our tag end of line around the main body of line. I like to go 7 times. Some people use 9, some people use more. It's as a general rule I would say 7 to 9. I'm not going to do that for this video, so we can just imagine that I've done our 7 turns. We then take the tag end and then lead it back into the loop that we created at the eye. We then, with a little bit of saliva, or you can use water if you have some water to hand, we will then moisten this knot, and then we'll pull the knot tight. Like so. And there you have your finished knot. So all we then do is take our scissors and we trim down our tag end. Now, the reason we moisten our knots is because nylon is very, as you'll see, very plasticky in texture. When you tighten your knot, it creates friction. Friction creates heat. Heat melts nylon. So it's important to moisten your knots to prevent any friction and ultimately any weakness in your line at what is the most important point of your fishing tackle. That is a half blood knot. Okay, so a half tucked blood knot. What we'll do now is we will now just snip our current knot off. Now, worth a point, when you cut your hook off your line, don't cut it up here. Sure you can, but then you're left with another length of line that you're then ultimately going to cut again. I always find it best to cut my hooks off at the knot. And obviously use a sharp pair of scissors, not like these ones. Any old bits of line, nylon, always make sure you take them home with you. Please don't litter. Okay, so now we've got hook and a fresh end to our line. So again, as with the half tucked blood knot, we go through the rear of the eye and we bring it up. So again, exactly the same process. We're going to go around 7 times. And then we're going to bring our tag end back through our loop. Now, like so. Now what makes this the tucked blood knot is we're then going to take the tag. See, we've created an additional loop here. We're going to take our tag end and we're going to take it back through this extra loop. Now, as with the other knot, again, always moisten your knots, pull it down tight, like so. And that is a half tucked blood knot. And trim down your tag end. And there we have our finished product. It's a little bit more secure than the standard half blood knot, because whereas the line could potentially slip, you have it tucked so it locks itself into place. And then we're just going to again snip that off, and there we go. Now we're going to move on to our next knot. Now, the next knot we are going to look at is the Paloma knot, or Paloma knot, depending on where you are in the country and how you choose to pronounce it. Now, I find that this knot is actually made a little bit easier to tie if you have a baiting needle or a sewing needle in your tackle box. Not everybody does this, so I will show you the way that I was taught. So, again, we take our hook, take our line, go through the rear of the hook. Now, what we then do is we take our tag end, we go round our finger once and twice, and creating 2 loops like so. And what we do with our tag end is we then take it through both loops, so it'll then be in line with your main line, and look a little bit something like that. Again, a little bit of spit, pull tight, and that's as strong a knot as you're going to get. Now, here we trim down our tag end. Now, as you can see, this actually leaves the tag pointing in line with your main line. Now, I like to use this knot when tying braid. So if I'm tying braid under a swivel, I will use this knot. Also, because in my freshwater fishing, I like to use barbless hooks. If I'm using worm on the hook, what I will do is I will thread a portion of the worm up the shank of the hook and up over the tip of the eye, and I will use that tag end as an anchor. So I will move it worm up over the knot and then just pull it down a little bit, and this tag end will embed inside the body of the worm, preventing the worm from wriggling off the hook. So that is the Paloma knot. Okay, now the next knot I'm going to show is how to tie a spade end hook. Now, at some point personally, I don't use Speedend hooks a lot, but at some point in your fishing life, you will return home from the tackle shop and find that even though you've asked for a packet of eye hooks, mistakes happen. You'll check the packet and you've in fact got a packet of spade hooks. Now, this knot is what you would use to tie on a Speedend hook. So, for the benefit of the video, if you can just pretend that this here eye is in fact a spade, as I don't have any Speedend hooks of this size. So what you would do is you would create a loop of line by running your main line along the shank of your hook, then bringing it back on itself like so. We then, through a process called whipping, we'll then wrap this main line around both the shank of the hook and the rest of our hook length like so. You should probably count these. I haven't. I would normally do 14 approximately for a nice secure knot. So we ensure that the line is of course coming off the back of the hook, and then what we do is we take our tag end, if I can get my fingers to work, take our tag end, feed it back through, again, bit of spit, and then we pull that tight up against the eye like so. Then with our incredibly blunt scissors, useful tip here kids, if you're going to do videos for YouTube, make sure you have sharp scissors to hand. And that is how we tie a Speedend hook. Now, you can, if you wish, obviously tie eyed hooks in the same manner. Some people will tie an eyed hook in this manner, but what they would do is they would actually feed the line through the eye from the front to the back and then tie it on like that. Just a little bit of extra security, keeps everything nice and neat and in line. Okay. Okay, so the next knot we're going to look at is a knotless knot, which you would use to tie a hair rig if you were fishing for species such as carp, or as I've said myself, I use this knot for fishing corn for bream. Okay, so first of all, what we would do is we would tie a little loop in the end of our hook length material. Now, I will be going on to tie hooks. If you're loops, if you're not familiar with this, please don't panic. So we will thread the line through the back of the eye like so, bringing your loop down to the shank. Now, some people choose to pre-thread their hook bait, whether it be a boilie, artificial corn, whatever you choose to use. Obviously I don't have any of those things to hand at the moment, and so I'm just going to show you it with the knot as it stands. So we have the loop, we would then hold and pinch our loop against the shank of the hook, and then proceed to wrap our hook length material around the shank again. Normally about 14 turns. A lot of people use more, a lot of people use less. Okay, and then what we would then do is we take our line and we take it through the back of the eye, at the front of the eye, like so. That would then secure our hair to the shank of the hook. Predominantly used for carp fishing, but can be used for other types of fishing as well. You can buy these pre-tied in a variety of styles. You can get them with what's known as a quick stop, which is a tiny plastic spike which you use to stop the bait coming off the hair. You can get them with pellet bands pre-tied. You can also get them with small meat spirals for holding meat onto the hair pre-tied, or you can get them pre-tied just with a standard hair like this. As you can see, it's relatively easy to tie your own. If I can do it, anyone can do it. That's your standard knotless knot used for hair rigging. Okay, so now I'm going to show you the method I use to tie the two different types of loops that I use in my fishing. So we've got your standard double overhand loop. So take your line and double it up on itself, so you have shorter length and the longer length. This is the length going to your reel or spool line that you're using for your hook length, whatever type of material you choose on that day. Okay, so take your loop. I like to use my fingers for this. You can get tools that will tie these knots for you, but personally I like to use my fingers. So we take our tag end of our loop, take it through once and twice, apply a little bit of moisture, and then pull tight. And again, there you have a completed loop. Although very functional and very practical, it is not the strongest of loops. Okay. So now I'm going to show you how to tie what is called a figure of 8 loop. So as with the standard loop, short tag end, long line to your reel or hook length, create your loop, go around, and rather than take it through the loop, what we're going to do is we're actually going to take it around the back of the loop and then take it through. So you might be able to tell on the video, it's made almost a figure 8 design. A little bit of moisture, and then pull it tight. Overall, again, snip tag end. I must get those scissors sharpened. Yeah, we have it, the finished product. Overall, a much stronger loop knot. Standard double, what is known as granny knot, a double overhand loop knot will also do the same trick. This is a much stronger loop. Okay, so now I am now going to show you how to attach two pieces of line using what is known as a loop-the-loop knot. So, as the name suggests, we have one loop, and hopefully you can see this a little bit finer. We have two loops. So what we would do is we take our first loop, which is generally your hook length, through the second loop, like so. We then take the tag end, which would normally have your hook attached. We will feed it back through the loop and then pull the knot tight against itself, like that. Very basic knot, very useful, ideal for tying hook lengths to main lines, tying on traces, things such as that. This also works in respect that you can use a loop to swivel. So if this loop here, instead of being a loop, was a swivel, you could use the exact same technique to attach your hook length direct to a swivel. And that is the loop knot. Okay. Now I'm going to show you a couple of knots that I use for attaching two different types of line together, and when you don't want to use, or if a loop-to-loop knot is not really plausible. For example, if you get a breakage in the middle of your line, you don't want to have to strip everything down and retie it. These are some of the knots that I've used in my time and will continue to use. So the first knot that I will show you is the water knot. So we have our two different types of line here. Hopefully you can still see. So we take them side by side like so, round the old fingers, creating a loop, through once, through twice. I like to use 4, through 3 times, through 4 times, then moisten and pull. Now trim your tag ends, and there you have the finished knot. Now as you can see, this knot, when the line is pulled tight, will actually poke out quite significantly. So if you're using this knot to tie two pieces of line that are going to be reeled onto your main line, there is a good chance it will restrict your casting, as you do tend to find that the line will get caught on these bristles. Okay. So now we're going to look at a different type of knot for attaching two types of line together. Now, I have previously shown you the half blood knot for attaching your hook to your hook length. Now I'm going to show you the full blood knot. Now this can be used to attach two types of line to each other with minimal tag ends, and ultimately causing minimal restriction on casting. So we take our two lines and we lie them side by side, with the tag ends pointing away from each other. So we'll take our first length and we'll wrap it once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. I like to stick with 4 times around the line we're wishing to tie it to, and feed it back through the loop like so. Now we'll take our other line in once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. Now where we fed the initial piece of line through this direction, we will feed the alternative line through in the other direction, like so. And then so it will tighten up against itself. Again, you would normally moisten it to prevent friction, and there you have a completed blood knot. Now what we can do then is we snip down our tag ends with our incredibly blunt scissors. go. As you can see, that knot should sit nice and tightly against your reel, causing minimal restriction on your casting. That is the plug knot. This is another type of knot that I like to use for attaching two pieces of line which are of different diameter. I like to use this for tying my fly line. I won't use a tapered leader as a lot of people will do. So we'll take our length of line, narrow, lie it alongside our broader length, bring it back on itself, creating a loop. And again, we're going to whip it to the line we're wishing to attach it to. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then bring it back through the loop like so, and with a bit of moisture, tighten that down. Now if this was being tied to fly line, if I was to tighten that, that would tighten up solid and your leader would then be attached. Now if I was tying it to something such as braid, or much thicker type of line, do very similar. Create the loop, wrap it once, 2, only going to do it twice on this one, back through your loop, pull that one tight, pull both knots up against each other, and there we go. And time on a tradition, blunt as scissors, trim down your tag end. There we go. That knot does have a specific name. The name of the knot does actually escape me at the moment. If anybody watching can provide the name, I would be much appreciative. And okay, so the next knot we're going to move on to is a stop knot. Okay, so a stop knot. Now I will admit what I quite like to use for my stop knots is one of these. A rubber band, as you can see, I've snapped it already. Because it's much easier to tie, it's much more flexible than nylon is, and it does pretty much exactly the same trick. So with the rubber band, I would basically just create a loop like so, pull it through the once, and then just pull it tight. That is a very effective stop knot. If you're reeling this onto your main line, I would trim these ends down a bit, but ultimately this will do the job. If you don't have a rubber band, I would highly recommend getting a collection of rubber bands because they always come in useful. You can tie a stop knot with a length of nylon. Now again, we would create a loop in our stop knot material like so, lie this along our main reel line, and then take your tag end, and normally use the longer of the two, through the knot and over your main line once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, like so. Add a little bit of moisture, and then pull it tight. Okay. Trim these tag ends down. I like to leave a little bit of tag end. The reason being is when you're using a stop knot, normally use it on a sliding float such as the inline pike floats that I've shown on a previous video. If you trim this far too far down, the bead can sometimes fly over the stop knot. If you have these tag ends, the bead's not going to go over that. That's going to stop it nicely. Also, if you're fishing deeper than just a rod length and this needs to be reeled onto your main line, these tag ends are nice and soft, nice and loose. They are not going to interfere with your casting. Okay. Alright guys, well that has been some of the knots that I use, some of them more basic than others, but overall not really too complicated. I hope you've enjoyed watching as much as I've enjoyed making it. Hopefully, unlike me, you will use some sharpened scissors before you try and cut your line, otherwise you do look like a little bit of a plank. I look forward to reading any comments that you might have to add. If you like it, please hit that thumbs up, and please, if you can bring yourself to do it, hit that subscribe button, and I will look forward to making more videos in the future. I'm hoping to be able to upload at least one a week, obviously time restricting, but yeah, thanks for watching, hope you have fun fishing, and if you see me out and about, give us a shout, say hello. I'm always willing to have a chat. Thank you very much.